just realizing like, oh, we're doing this thing together, and we're in this together, and like we're excited to figure it out together.
That was really refreshing to be in a situation where I didn't feel like I had to pretend like I had all the answers.
There was a sense of like childlike play. Did we all just become best friends?
Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Dreams of Education with me, Kelly Tenkely, and my friend and coworker,
Michelle Baldwin.
So Michelle, today I was thinking about how much of what we did really hinged on the culture that we built. And we touched on some pieces of that culture, but I think all the time about how much of school is a hidden curriculum, meaning we do things pretty overtly in schools. We have rules, we have, things that we state explicitly in our curriculum and in the way that we do things. We tell kids what our values are. But there's this hidden curriculum, which is all of the nuance of kind of the underlying messages that kids actually get from the way that we do things. And so I wanted to talk a little bit today about just how we built that culture and how important that was for us to really root kids in a sense of belonging, a sense of that they had a place, and how we did that.
And someone cares for me at school. And that's not unique to our school. There are lots of places where kids go into schools, and public schools, private schools, all around the world, where they feel like they matter and they belong. That is done, again, very intentionally. I think that we just did it in a different way. There were lots of options that we have and had because we were so small that a lot of other schools don't have. And so I see that. I mean, I remember, when I was teaching 450 kids every day, that's becomes harder and harder to do. When you have, 50 kids or fewer, you have to be extremely intentional to really cultivate relationships with kids so that they know we don't just care about your scores. We don't just care about you academically. We are here for you. And what that looks like, we talked in one of the previous episodes about assessment and sitting beside kids as we assess them. So it's not just here, take a test. Okay, this is your score. We're watching and observing the entire time to see, okay, this is the progress that you're making. It's the same thing with how they come to us on any given school day. It's how they learn to regulate emotions because we are sitting beside them in this time. Is it okay if I talk about Inside Out right now?
Yeah, do it.
So I'm sorry, but that movie's brilliant. And the sequel as well.
It's brilliant. I have not seen the sequel, but I need to see it
oh my gosh.
The first
Yes,
one's brilliant. And what we could do, like sharing pieces of that with kids, like it's such a good teaching moment as well.
It is. I mean, I'm talking about even as an adult, I'm like, oh, wow, that could have saved me a lot of therapy. No. There is, if you haven't seen Inside Out, and you're an adult and you feel weird about watching animation, I would say try to get that, suspend that part of you and seriously watch that movie, because the film goes through, and I know that they talked about behind the scenes when they were creating it, how much just understanding the human condition, how important that is. But basically there are 5 emotions that are inside this little girl's head, and they have a dashboard, and Amy Poehler plays Joy, and she just wants the little girl to be happy all the time. And as they learn throughout the film, you can't be happy all the time, and you need to be able to sit with your sadness, with your anger, with your disgust, with your fear, because if you're not allowing those parts of you to ever take control, you become unbalanced, one of the two. And there's this scene in the movie where joy and sadness get lost inside the little girl's brain. And they meet up with this character called Bing Bong, who is a memory of, I love Bing Bong. Everybody loves
Love
Bing
Bing
Bong.
Bong.
So they meet up with Bing Bong and they're trying to get back to headquarters. But there's a part where Bing Bong starts to become really sad because he's like, I'm never going to get to have these new memories with Riley because she's growing up and she doesn't have a need for me anymore. And Joy's like, hey, we don't have time for this. Come on, let's get going. It's okay. You'll be fine. And sadness goes over and she sits next to Bing Bong and she goes, that's really sad. And he just keeps sharing and she sits with him in his grief and listens to him share. And she's empathizing. She's using active listening skills that a lot of us were taught. And I just remember going, oh, right? I mean, it's not only do I need to allow kids to be sad, my own children too, when they are sad, but it's to sit beside them and I don't have to fix it. I don't have to let's get happy again. It's really important to sit beside them and let them be where they are and help them through that process. And
it's really letting the entire human experience to be allowed at school, which when I was in school, I did not feel that way.
Right.
You know, it was like you compartmentalize and you show up as your academic persona at school and hold it together. And then you can be a whole person when you get back home.
And that's when a lot of kids tend to fall apart when they go home, right? Mm-hmm. We hear a lot of kids get into their vehicles at carpool and just have a tantrum or they completely lose it and just sob. And the parents are like, what's happening? And we're like, we don't know. They had a great day. But learning how to help kids navigate their feelings. And that's, again, going back to that culture that we've created and how important it is to, you know what, you're not going to be happy every second of the day. And that's okay. If you're stressed, if you're anxious, if you're afraid, if you're angry, let's make space for that. Let's walk through it appropriately and give ourselves the time for that. And I know just the different kind of spaces. We've talked about the tent in a previous episode. Sometimes that place was a tent. And watching kids who sometimes have those breakdowns in school because they don't know how to not only regulate their emotions, but they don't know how to manage them once they're in the middle of something big. So I know we talked a lot with kids about big feelings and what does it look like when you are angry or when you're sad or anxious or afraid? How do we deal with that? How do we help you manage that during the school day? Instead of pretending it doesn't exist and saying, sorry, you're going to math now, pull it together.
We don't have time for this.
We don't have time for you to fall apart. And what does that teach kids? What does it teach adults? Right?
Right. Us too.
Yeah. So that's,
and one of the things I love that we did really well was created spaces where that could be allowed. And we created a school environment where that could be allowed. So it wasn't that they had to go to a separate space when it was happening. We made those available. You know, not everybody likes to fall apart in public, but I love that it wasn't just for students too. I mean, how many times did we shut the door in the office and break down or have a moment in the elevator?
Many times
on the way up
elevator.
to a classroom, right? And so I love that we even created that space for each other, that it was okay to show up as full humans, everybody in the building. Let's talk about some ways that just some of that hidden curriculum that made all of that possible, because I agree, we did a good job of creating a place where kids could bring their whole selves and where we embraced that and walked alongside them in not just academics, but social conflict, emotional distress, or elation, either way. We really did a good job, I think, of that. And the kids felt it. That's, I think, why they still reach out to us no matter what's going on in their life, whether they have something to celebrate or they want to, they need somebody soft to listen to them. So one of the things I was thinking about is how much I was in schools that would tout a growth mindset and really, encourage growth mindset of individuals. But then all of the systems in place and the actual culture in place was very fixed.
Right.
And so we were expecting something of kids and of teachers, frankly, that was in direct opposition, right? We were asking them to be very growth minded, to be okay with failure, but then we had assessment practices in place that didn't make failure feel safe or okay. We had rules in place that told us different things than what the rules explicitly said versus, how that made us feel. And kind of, like I said, that hidden curriculum. So one of the things I was thinking about that we did, even from the very big, it probably took a few years before we had this going, but we wanted kids to be so central to the learning that was happening. We also wanted them to be central in the decisions that we made. And I was thinking about even something as innocuous as class lists, at the beginning of the year, where usually schools that I've been a part of will send out, a summer packet, and it's got the class lists in the summer packet. Parents open it and, or get it in the email, whatever. And we were like, well, who gets most excited to know whose class they're in and who their classmates are? It's not the parent,
Right.
It's the kids, right? And so how do we even make them central in those moments? And so we decided, well, let's put together a packet that is all about them and that they get snail mail and it's addressed to them. And it gets them pumped and excited about the year to come. They're already anticipating it. Like, why are we not involving them in the process? And so we would send these little kits that had a variety of things, the calendar for the year and kind of the normal things you'd put in that type of a packet. But then we had these announcements of whose class you were going to be in. And it was in the form of a balloon. So they literally get a balloon. And when you blow up the balloon, it says whose class you're in. And we encourage kids to, take a picture and share it, with parent permission, share it with the community so that excitement kind of fed of, when they got their package, when they got their balloon to blow up. But just, we forget that those little moments and those little touch points, who is it for? Who's getting excited? Who's anticipating? Who might be nervous about the class that they're in? That we can just bring some excitement and joy in those small moments.
One year we got into a van and drove to all the houses and met the kids. I don't remember. Was a year.
We put lawn signs in their yard that said "A creative, innovative Anastasis genius lives here," and gave them some popcorn and took selfies with them. And yeah, it was fun to watch on social media, especially like the first, 15 kids. By the 50th kid, we were less enthusiastic about still being in the van.
I mean, August, it's, it's good. My favorite was when the kids weren't home. And so we would take pictures. Like there was one place where she had dogs and pigs outside her house. And I took a selfie with one of her dogs and then sent it to her mom, and her mom shared it. And that's what went on social media. That was the excitement and knowing whose class that she was going to be in. But it was just kind of like this little sneak attack. The parents knew, but the kids didn't always know. And that was kind of a really fun way to do that. Now, again, you can't do that if you have 450 kids.
In an enormous school. Right. Absolutely. I mean, it was hard enough for us.
Yeah.
We were like, if we ever do this again, we have to divide and conquer. It was really fun for us all to be together, having that experience together. Right. But it got to be overwhelming by the end of the day. We should have, I don't know how we could have split that up, but but again, like, who is it for, and how are you bringing excitement and joy to those moments and setting up the year of, we're going to see you, we're going to care about you, like there's things that we can do that are fairly easy, even as simple as like putting the child's name on the mailer instead of the parent's name. Right. And I think, there's ways to do that can be very simple. Again, we're small, so we had the capability of doing some of these things that were a little bit more maybe outlandish. I don't know. But that sets the year up, telling them, right? It's sending a message about, what the year's going to be like. And it's not hearing from your mom that you're in somebody's class, or your guardian that you're in somebody's class. It's getting that piece of mail, opening it up, getting excited, knowing that your friends are doing the same thing, sharing, calling each other, sharing. The number of them that would send like screenshots from their FaceTime of them sharing that they're both got the red balloon and we're in your class, like it was just really fun. Those special moments that seem they're so small, but they make such a big impact on how kids see themselves, how they see school, how they see learning, how they're showing up. And then we gave them, always there was something in there that was the entire school got something that was in common. So I think the very first year it was, we made friendship bracelets that said, Anastasis would not, KNOT, be the same without you. So cheesy. And I think I had a group of girls make those friendship bracelets. And so it was fun as they were being passed out that they knew that they were the ones, everybody was wearing the thing they created. But we've done different things over the years, but always like, how do we start central with students? And then how does that build out? I was also remembering and thinking about, we talked about, we always started with the learner profile meetings where the kids would come in, we'd play a game. So we showed through those meetings how much we cared about their voice. We valued who they were. Enough to sit for an hour and just have a conversation one-on-one, like how valuable that time is. But then our first week of school, we dedicated to getting to know kids and to helping them be rooted in belonging through Detox Week. And we kind of touched on how Detox Week got started with Monica Hardy. We kind of took this idea and then ran with it. But I wanted to talk about really what Detox Week felt like as a teacher, and then talk about how we kind of built that over time and it evolved and created. I really think it was so important to how everything else unfolded.
I think like back to when I was a kid, and the first week of school, they would give us an index card in elementary school, middle school, and high school. It was like, this is what you do the first week of school. You'd get an index card in each class for each teacher, and you'd fill it out with your name and your age or your birthday, maybe some family names, or, some of the fun teachers would ask us a silly question that we'd have to answer. And then that was really it. And then you would give the index card back to the teacher, and it might then like they'd switch, okay, now you get your textbook or something like that. And it felt back then like, wow, that's really a step. My teacher wants to know who I am. And again, in a larger class situation, that may be all you could do at the very beginning. So I feel like one of the things that we would do is just play games with the kids, do some challenges that I remember quite a few. This is going to be a call back to the past, but Odyssey of the Mind. I don't know if anybody listening remembers Odyssey of the Mind, but it was when I was a kid, it was called Challenge. But a lot of Odyssey of the Mind groups would go and have kids do these problem solving activities and engineering and things. So we took a lot of those activities and did some of those.
I forgot that that's where so many came from in the early days.
Like the toothpick and the marshmallow challenges, build a structure. Yep. Sometimes we did at Anastasis, we did those in the class, just with your class and your teacher, or we would mix the kids all up in the community. So they were multi-age groups, and we would give them challenges like that. And it taught us very early who likes to take the lead, who likes to be told what to do, and who does not like to be told what to do, where there were any kind of maybe personality conflicts that could kind of help us watch those things happen early and be ready for it, so that it wasn't like, a super important project down the road. And all of a sudden now we're like, oh gosh, these kids don't know how to work as a team. So I feel like that was just another, again, the kids they just thought we were having fun and playing games.
Yes.
Right. But it was really important to us to see their personalities come out in different situations compared to right now you're journaling or learning something in math, or now you're trying to build something and the constraints are pretty tight and you don't have a lot of options. Right. We saw some kids who weren't always successful in traditional model school shine in those situations because they were very good problem solvers. in ways that looked different than maybe a traditional school activity. So I really loved those. They gave it so much information, but it was also just fun for us to hang out with the kids and do really fun activities.
It was also a chance for them to see that was, I mean, we set them up in Detox Week for a lot of laughter through games and different things that we were doing, but we also set them up for mini crises where there was going to be conflict, there was going to be some failure. We gave them tasks sometimes that we knew we were setting them up for frustration and failure. Right. And then we would pause the whole, especially when it was a whole group, we'd pause and say, okay, what went well? What was hard? What are you going to do different? And then we'd let them try again. And so they got to see that at Anastasis, failure looks different. It's going to be a reflect and iterate. It's not that one, 5-minute challenge. After the 5 minutes is up, you're not sitting in the failure. You're not sitting in the frustration. It's how do we work through? And so really getting to know each other in the classroom as well. I think about even, we made the circle overlap of gifts and talents and different things in the classroom, multiple intelligence strengths that the different kids in the classroom had. So we'd take the learner profile and kind of overlay it so that you could see at a glance, like who in the class did what. And it was neat to have those discussions with the kids because they start to realize like, oh, I'm have my own gifts and my own things that I can be good at. I don't have to look like everybody else, but I can honor and value that other people have gifts that when we work together, like collectively, we're going to be stronger than any one of us individually, really building in that thought process around collective intelligence in the classroom very intentionally through some of those moments and things that we were doing. And
taking the competition out of it. Sometimes we did have competitions amongst the whole school. And those were the times when we saw the most consternation, the frustration just like elevated. But most of the time it wasn't a competition. And I remember having to say that over and over and over again because kids are so used to competing constantly. First one done.
They're used to the unhealthy competition.
Right?
There's a healthy version of it, right?
Exactly.
Which is we're going to get better each time, right? That's more almost competition, like within your group of we failed this time, but then we're trying it again. We got a little better. And it's that reflection process of, oh, the competition was with the previous version of who we were as a team.
And prizes and rewards didn't figure in there because we didn't do that.
No.
They started to really, especially as we progressed through the school year and subsequent years, how much our kids realized I'm not competing against everybody else. It's just myself. And when you're able to do that, it changes your outlook on learning so much. It changes your outlook on how your teacher and your principal see you, how your parents see you, how your friends see you. Yep. And again, it's not perfect. I mean, kids still have that. A lot of kids are just born more competitive. They are always, they always feel like they have to do better than everyone else. And I that's something that for a long time I was that way when it came to grades, right? And learning. And
I was going to say, how much of it is nature versus nurture?
Yeah.
Because so much of, I can play a game. I'm perfectly, like, I just want to play. I don't care if I win. I don't care if I lose. Like, I just want somebody to engage with me and play the game. But when it came to grades, I felt very inadequate if I wasn't the best. And it was so, again, that it was that hidden curriculum that I was getting of your value comes from this number. Right. And if you're not the best, then you're worthless.
I think a lot of kids who have perfectionism in them, whether they're born like that or that's nurtured in some way, feel like they have to be good at everything. And I know we've talked about this before, that helping them to see that this isn't a competition really helps those kids who are perfectionists to some degree let go of that. Because whether that's just, elevated frustration when you're not good at something and then you stop trying, or it's not trying something at all because I've never done it. And if I'm not instantly good at it, I don't want to do it. I see that a lot actually in music class, when a lot of kids who come in and they're good at sports, or they're good academically. I say good, generally speaking. They have a lot of success in school, and they come into music, and I put a xylophone in front of them and they freak out. Right?
I'm raising my hand. That's me.
Because this is something I've never seen. The kids who've taken piano lessons are instantly, they're
No
playing
problem.
along. They've already got melodies. And I'll see tears in music. And that's the time when I go, okay, this is definitely a group effort, but you're just learning. Have you ever played a xylophone before? Well, no. Okay. So we're at a novice level right now. That's okay.
Yeah.
But that need to look at what the person next to them is able to do, and I can't do that yet, and helping sit beside them to say it's okay that you're not doing as well as someone else, because they have more experience than you do. They've practiced before, they've done this before, or they've done something like this before. And that again comes back to our culture, and the competition in learning is so very problematic, and we reward it in so many ways, with grades, with school attendance rewards. Anastasis doesn't, but a society.
Yes.
I mean, just
the bananas things that we choose to give importance to, and the damage that it does. I think, again, best of intentions, right? The whole reason I think attendance awards exist is for the kids who maybe can't get the honor roll award. And so it's like, well, if you show up every day, here's another,
and also to encourage
I think
attendance.
That was probably what it, I think it was probably born out of a place that was best of intentions. I remember when I was in first grade, the school I went to had VIP awards, very important person awards. And every month there was a big assembly, and it was a big deal. And as a kid, you don't know that in the course of a year, everybody in class is going to get a VIP award. That's just not something you're aware of. And so I remember each month sitting in class, like fingers crossed, like, is it going to be this time for me? And my classmates' names would get called. And I remember thinking, like, it had a whole list of character traits that made you a VIP. And I remember thinking, so do I not have those character traits? What do I have to do to be better? Because I'm looking at this kid and I would have guessed I had more of that character trait than this kid does. Not realizing if I'm a teacher and I have to do this for all the kids in the class, and I know this is going to be a hard kid to, as the year progresses, it's going to get harder to honestly give this award. I'm going to get the hard ones out of the way at the beginning. As an educator, as an adult, I can see that that's what was happening. But as a kid, you just feel less and less worthy each time everybody else's name gets called. Everybody else's parents are in the audience. Right. They get the cookie at the end of the awards ceremony. And you're left wondering, like, what's wrong with me that I'm not a VIP?
Right.
And so we put these like practices into place. Again, very fixed mindset. Growth mindset wasn't a thing. Carol Dweck hadn't done that work yet. But I think about how many schools still have some of these practices in place. The first school I worked in still did behavior charts as a school practice, where it was, the red, green, yellow flip. And it was just accepted as this is just what we do here. And it wasn't until later when I started, interacting with the folks in our PLN and reading Alfie Cohen and some of these different authors that I really started to go, wait a minute, this is deeply problematic because, one, it feels like public shaming.
Shame-based education, right? I feel like people mistakenly think that shame is motivating. And what we learn, if we are learning, if we're trying to grow and expand what we understand about human behavior, shame is not motivating. It's actually going to take away motivation, because
it's also so isolating.
It is,
right? It creates
Absolutely.
the division in classrooms.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't want to, I don't want to sit next to you. You're
on the
rub
red.
off on me.
You're on the red.
Yeah.
I can't be by you. Yeah.
You're the bad kid. Yeah.
And it automatically creates labels. Even if an adult doesn't say that label out loud, these kids come in and think, I'm the bad kid. And where do you go if you're the bad kid?
Well, and everybody else is going home saying, well, they're the bad
Right.
kid.
Right. And if you are a parent or if you've been in education at all, you know what other kids and families will start talking about the bad kid or bad kids because they come to school and they say, please take my kid out of that class because I don't want them with the bad kids. And
yes.
And again, now you're like,
or low kids,
right?
Or
I'm like, you do realize
there's so many ways
you do realize that's someone's child that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And whether, again, if you're in a school and you have, these practices, sometimes you might not have a choice, but then maybe your choice is, how can you use a behavior chart if it's mandated in your school in a way that does not shame the children? Do they all just stay on green? I don't know. I think
right.
We just remove them
because it's not going to change behavior is what we know.
Right.
It just creates divisiveness. It's problematic for the individuals. It's also problematic for the kids who are always on green, who think, like, well, I'm hot shit. Like they just think they're great. And you're like, it's problematic on both ends. Yeah. It's not only problematic for those kids who shame, it's also deeply problematic for kids like you and I, who were the perfectionists, who were always doing, tried to do the right thing. Like, it created really unhealthy messages for you and I too.
Well, and I think too, if you're a quiet kid and you don't ever rock the boat, you stay on green by not doing anything. So you're now, that reinforcement is don't do anything. Don't take any risks. Don't talk because your behavior right now is already
small and quiet.
Exactly. You're already being rewarded for something that maybe isn't a healthy situation for you. I don't know.
So on the other end of the public shaming is the rewards-based systems.
Glorification.
The glorification and bribery. I mean, let's call it what it is, bribery. Right. We also didn't do that. No. Because for all the same reasons, like it's going to create the same problems from a different standpoint.
I feel like what we were able to do in place of all of that, like the VIP or like, and I know some schools also do this where it's a student of the week kind of situation. So within our classrooms, our kids got to have, their own place and space where they could share what they wanted to share. So maybe it was, let's bring in pictures of our family, or let's bring in pictures of us doing something fun with our friends. And each classroom kind of made space for that so that they not only made the classroom their own, but it also was a way of sharing who I am. Other schools I know have gone to, will do student or students of the week, where they're allowed to highlight kids in a way that isn't rewards based. It's like everybody's going to get to be student of the week, and here's what you're going to share. And in that way, the expectations are communicated ahead of time. So unlike your VIP situation where they didn't communicate, you're all going to get a chance, right? Because then you're left wondering, what's wrong with me? In this case, kids are able to share what they want to share about themselves. It doesn't have to be, I know when my kids were little, they had these little templates they filled out. And I'm not really, like, not every family looks the same. So let's not make assumptions of what should be on that all about me page, right? So if you let the kids design it, you give them some parameters, then they know, okay, this place cares enough about me that eventually I am going to be a student of the week, whatever that might be, whether it's classroom based, school based, or that. But going back to like behavior again, if you know that your name is going to be on the board every day because you're in trouble, or your name is not going to be on the board every day because you're just staying very small, what are we doing to counteract the messages that those kids are getting? And how are the adults like perpetrating that? Is it a healthy space? I can think back to practices that I did as a first year teacher, and I'm just like, cringing because like,
oh, same.
Right. I did some of those things and I totally regret them. It did not build
Well,
relationships.
and not only that, we were told it was best practices.
Yeah. It didn't build healthy relationships with students. They didn't trust. A lot of my students did not trust me until they really got to know me.
No.
The kids who got to know me were the ones who I was doing like show choirs or whatever extracurriculars with, which, okay, great. But the other kids that I had in my classroom, they should have been able to see that same personality that the kids who spent more time with me did, because that person was more human, more open and vulnerable than the teacher who had to like keep everything perfect in a classroom, especially if, principals were walking by. That behavior better be, on point for every single kid. And that's not realistic. One of the things that I loved about Anastasis is I knew that because we discouraged behavior charts, we encouraged discussion about how are you walking in the building today? Where are you feeling on a mood map or something? You journal about it, whatever practice was happening in each classroom, morning meetings. I also knew that as the day was progressing, that when you're walking in, the expectation for the adults was also part of that culture, that you could walk in and I didn't feel like I'm in a gotcha moment, right?
Oh, into your classroom.
Right. Yes. So it was, there were the expectations and the communication of why I'm walking through. You might've been taking people on a tour who wanted to learn more about our school, whether they were prospective families or they were other educators touring.
Sometimes I just needed a break from the work I was doing.
Sometimes I
needed some joy.
Just wanted to come in a classroom and see what the kids were doing. And
mostly that's what it was.
Absolutely.
Right? It was mostly like, you all are brilliant. Like, I want to come learn how to, it was a lot of that.
And I will also say that because of past experience, and as a veteran teacher with a lot of years of experience, there were occasions when I would still straighten my spine and go, and look around the classroom like, is everybody doing what they're supposed to be doing? Because even, again, that reaction is so ingrained in me, is that this is going to be a gotcha moment, even though I knew it was not.
Well, and the reality is, from my standpoint, I could walk in and kids could be doing kid things because that was my expectation, is that they're going to be fully children. Right. Because that's what they are. They're going, and none of us is doing all the things right in every moment of every day. And so I never expected to walk in and have perfection ever. Which hopefully helped all of you not feel like, I was coming in to be the heavy or something.
Well, and it was great for the kids to see that too, because especially if they've been in other schools before, because they were used to, a principal is coming to observe, the classroom might look different today. Yeah. And I remember that from past experiences, that sometimes that was the expectation from the principal too, or any administrator. But I felt like having the kids doing what they did, we could have been in the middle of a cosmic kids yoga, or they could have been journaling or reading or having a break or doing some really cool activity. All of that, they would see you come in and they would just be excited to share with you what they were doing.
Well, and half the time I'd just join in whatever was happening. If there was a discussion, I'd just jump in. If there was yoga, I'm in.
And that's, again, signs of a healthy culture, when you feel like the kids are the ones leading the learning in a way that I shouldn't say leading the learning, but they're responsible for their learning so much so that they want to share it with you. And it's not, look at this worksheet Mrs. Baldwin just had us do, right? No, it's, hey, we're learning how to make paper today. And here's the history of paper,
look at the
right?
one I did.
Yeah. And how cool that was for the kids to take that ownership. But that, again, only happens when there's a culture of trust and acceptance.
And to go back, trust cannot happen without first having a sense of belonging. Right. We think that vulnerability precedes trust, but really trust precedes you have to be trusted in order to really be vulnerable. Right. I think I stole that from Brené Brown probably. But I think so much about how we built a culture of trust really intentionally. I think about our friend Bob Dylan, who goes through schools and looks at culture and looks at space and looks at things kind of differently. And one of the things he does in schools that he talks about is going through and seeing what rules are posted, what kind of signs are posted, and he'll count how many no's he sees on walls. And we really worked hard to create not a list of rules that everyone was going to follow, but instead, what's a code that we agree to live by? And so our code had things like, if we see somebody needs help, we're going to help them.
Right.
When we need help, we're going to ask for it.
Right.
We're going to respect one another. And here's what respect looks like. We're going, we talked all the time about, like, if you're in front of somebody, hold the door open, like just small things that seem like not enormous, but we didn't have a list of do's and don'ts. It was really, we agree to show up together like this because it's going to make it a better place for all of us.
Well, and we learned along the way that not only were we doing that, kids learn a lot of things that they can't do. And we wanted to really focus on the things that they could do and how that could take the place of a list of do not, do not, do not. Right.
Yeah.
And Andrea, oh gosh, what's Andrea's last name?
Andrea Pittman of Nectar.
Yes.
Nectar
she was doing some staff development for us one day, and she was talking about the human brain. And most people, if you say the word apple, you'll see a picture of an apple. Some people might see the word apple in their head.
Representation.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You're going to see some kind of physical, visual reference in your brain. What you can't do is see the word not. So if I say, don't eat an apple,
no, don't.
Right? If I say, don't eat an apple, all you're going to see is that apple representation. So again, thinking through that logically, if I say, don't hit your neighbor, that's a pretty extreme example, but then all I can think about is hitting my neighbor. If I really want to focus on what we do in a positive way, I need to make sure that the language supports that and developmentally what those brains can do. And
well, again, it's that hidden curriculum. Right. We might have a list of rules that truly we do want kids to follow. Right. We don't want you to hit. We don't want you to say rude things to each other. We don't want you to, right? Those all could be true. But just as you're saying, the very nature of the language we use, how we use that language, how we set that up. A lot of times when I see different schools' rules, what it tells me is you don't trust kids.
Right.
Because they haven't even come in to do the right or wrong thing. And you're assuming by your list of rules that I'm going to do the wrong thing.
Right.
And so already we've broken trust just purely by the rules you set up before I even got to school. And so that's what I think we mean when we say, like, there's this hidden curriculum that really does infiltrate your culture, whether or not you intend it to. And so sometimes the practices and the systems that we have in place haven't been held up to the light in so long that we think that that's the way it needs to be, instead of really going back and saying, what is this communicating to the actual students? What does this assume about them? What does this assume about the space or the classroom or whatever, right? You're already telling me not to do a list of things that you didn't know if I would or not.
Right. And
right.
Yeah.
And it's based on somebody else messing up, not, like a lot of times it's in place because it became a problem for somebody else.
And it's also, if you look at how the adults are treated in a school, that trickles down, right? If administration does not trust the teachers, then the teachers might not trust the kids either. I think we have this weird societal contempt for kids anyway in kid behaviors. And you could see that.
Yeah, where do you think that comes from?
Oh, that's another episode. Let's not unpack that today.
We won't deep dive there.
No,
yet.
But we do have some societal issues around authoritarianism, and if you don't, crack the whip, people aren't going to do what they should do. We know.
We're even told as teachers, put on your angry face so that kids get that first, so that they know their place in the classroom. And it's like, what on earth are we doing here?
Don't smile till Christmas. That's what was always told to me. So, but I think if we go back to that, where if if a teacher feels like there's a thumb on them all of the time,
Mm-hmm.
it's human nature to then do that to someone else because that's how you're feeling. If you're
Sure.
feeling put upon or unappreciated or underappreciated, that
or under a microscope,
that
that
micromanaging,
if everything's not perfect,
then that's what you
then
do to the
it's on
kids.
me. Yeah.
And it just all trickles down in the worst way, where I feel like, again, if there's some good dialogue, conversation, whatever, from administration into your teaching staff and other faculty members, and how you build the culture there, then it makes it, there's more permission and like just a freedom, like the autonomy to say, okay, well, I can give kids freedom. Not every kid is going to take you a mile. That doesn't mean give them no boundaries, of course.
Sure.
Right? We have,
and we gave great boundaries
Absolutely.
of, you know, in order for us to work together in this space and to live together, like, here's some things that are just non-negotiable,
Right.
because this is our parameters. This is the constraints we're in.
That last class that I had in the spring, we would talk a lot about things distract you from learning. And they were able to share that. And I said, okay, so then can we agree that we have some times when you all say that it has to be absolutely silent, from like somebody fidgeting or talking or making a clicking noise? Can we agree that if you're reading right now that you need it silent? And then they would say, oh, well, we could do okay with some music. And then as the adult, I'd say, I will play music. It has to be ambient sound, because if you hear lyrics, your brains are going to have a really hard time with lyrics coming in and your eyes trying to read. As much as you think that you're able to do that, your brain can't do those things 100% at the same time. But again, having those conversations went back to the classroom culture to say, okay, we can decide what kind of noise is acceptable during some times. Do we actually have times when we need conversation? Absolutely. That might be small group. It might be partners, whatever that happens to be. But we also have to set aside some time when, okay, this is what we need from everybody. And when they couldn't do that on their own, I would just remind them, like, this is what you agreed to. Right? We had it on a classroom charter. I can point it to this. This is what you agreed. Oh yeah. Okay. And they could get back to it.
Well, and sometimes it was, what do you know, I'm noticing that this is really hard for you right now. What do you need? And sometimes it was, I need to go read with Ms. Tenkely, or I need to go read in the lobby, or I need to go read, in a different spot.
I need to go take a walk for a minute.
Yes. I'm fidgety. Can I go fill up my water bottle? Yeah. So sometimes it was just a matter of returning to, this is what we all agree. We talked about this. We agreed to this as a group, that this is how we work best. Right now, you're not working within that. So what do you need so that can be true?
Right.
But again, all of that is so honoring to the individual of realizing you're a whole human. You might be having a hard moment. You might be having a hard day. You might, there's so many things that could be going on. You might just have had too much sugar and you need to move for a minute, right? Like, all of those are very human and okay things.
Let's talk about something that's really superhuman, and that is bathroom needs. The culture at Anastasis was, if you have to go to the restroom, then you go. Let me know so I know where you are, because I'm responsible for your physical safety, all of that. If there's a fire drill, I need to know where you are, all those kind of safety things. I just need to know where you're going, but you don't need permission. If we're having a group conversation, or you just got to music and we're starting a song, is this the best time to go? Think about those things. We'd have those conversations with the kids. So when they told us I have to go to the restroom, or did their little crossed finger sign, okay, you just go. You don't need permission to have a bodily function that all humans have. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I
don't disrupt as you're on your way out. Don't, like all of the things we do as adults all the time, of managing when is it appropriate, and teaching that to kids from a young age, rather than dictating when it's okay to have a bodily function.
But even then, for the kids that I knew were using that as, I just need to escape, then I could have a conversation with that particular student and say, oh, I noticed that you always have to go to the restroom right when we start math, for example.
Mhm.
And let's talk about that.
And it takes 20 minutes. Tell me more.
Exactly. Why are you is this just your regular, daily constitutional or whatever it's called? Or is this really an escape? And if you need an escape, let's talk about that instead. Let's talk about why. How can we help you? Is it something that you do literally need to just walk down to the office so that your body has a reset and then you can come back and be ready? And all of those, just having conversations. And as you said, it's honoring that individual's needs instead of saying, no, you may not go to the bathroom until it's time to go to recess, because that's how kids, get sick. It's how adults get sick. I mean, we can't continue to police bodily functions because it's not convenient to the classroom. And that I kept thinking too, if whatever I'm doing is so important in the classroom that I don't want them to leave right now, that's a control issue I have.
That's a really good point.
Right. And I'm a control freak. I have issues with that. And I have learned over time, I have to really,
I didn't want to say anything.
I gladly admit it, but it is important. Why am I so much more important than that kid who really has to go to the bathroom, can't leave the classroom right now? That's not okay. And again, if I had 38 kids in my classroom and they all tried to go to the bathroom at the same time, and that's happened in the past, then I have to think that a little bit differently than if it's 12.
Yeah.
However, maybe they all just got back from recess and lunch and they all do have to go to the restroom. So then I need to make sure that the way I schedule the activity in my classroom is still honoring the kids' physical needs. The number of times that I remember not being able to go to the bathroom in class and holding it. And then you hear about kids who have accidents at school and how embarrassing it is. And that's something I'm like, I don't ever want to be the cause of a kid having an accident because I didn't let them go. It's humiliating.
Well, and even in that small way, you're giving kids agency.
I should have agency, right? We shouldn't take that away from them.
Correct.
But again, when we feel like, well, if you just teach those little bladders to behave, that's not going to work. My earbuds are going bad.
I also think that there is something to, we had kids who had different needs in a lot of different ways, but in that small, when you need to go to the bathroom, let us know and just go. Those small things, when there were bigger things that came up for them, for example, a kiddo with misophonia who, could hear the buzzing of a light, felt empowered to just go quietly shut off the light and handle that problem without disrupting anyone, that agency carried into so many other places where I don't know, it just again, we're honoring who they are, what their needs are, that they're whole humans, that they're coming with a whole set of things. We always had, going back to our code, we always had that code in place, and it had things, when you need help, ask for it. When you see somebody needing help, give it. No skunking, skunk spray, negative energy. Don't be a skunk. That was our only no.
That was our only no. Yeah.
Yep. That was our only no in there. Mistakes are teachers. It's okay to make a mistake. They're teachers. We're going to embrace that that's true. All of these things of just how do we take care of each other in a community? And that was our parameters. But then we would go through those at Metanoia one by one and really dissect. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What could this, how could we embody this? So in that community time in the morning, those first weeks of school, we'd literally go one by one and talk about each one. And the kids always came up with brilliant examples and whatever. But then they'd go into the classrooms and you all would create either a class charter or class constitution. Do you want to talk about how you led that process?
Sometimes it just depended on the class, right? Because you always have different individuals in there. And some kids are instantly, we should not, do not. And we would talk about the whole issue of not.
How do we flip
it? How can I turn, do not take other people's things? And so I'd write it on the board. It's okay. Tell me what it looks like if I want this to be a do instead of a do not. And depending on the group of kids, sometimes they needed a little bit more help with that. And like I said, when you're asking me not to touch your stuff, what are you really asking me? Well, I'm asking you to respect my stuff. And I said, oh, just your stuff. Well, no, I guess I'm asking you to respect me. I said, okay, so what can we write about respect that is something that is a do? And like, just respect each other. And somebody said, and yourself. And I was like, oh, that was great.
Brilliant.
So it really was, for me, it was leading an inquiry into what do we want our classroom culture to be?
Yeah.
So I would ask questions to help get them started and just have them, like, either they would write things down on chart paper, or we'd start on a whiteboard so we could kind of narrow things down. And then after a while, there would be some themes that would emerge. Almost all of them would fall into the respect each other and yourself. Yeah. So we would then go in and say, okay, which ones fall under the umbrella of this respect thing? And they could list, okay, so we don't need to say any of these because those all fall under that. What else? And then they would come up. We usually had about 4 or 5 different things in our class charter, which, again, depending on the age of the students, the younger students, that was plenty. For the older kids, sometimes they wanted a few more, and that was fine too. But that process, the kids had to have buy-in. They had to have, it could not be me telling them what to do. They had to be the ones who generated it. And again, staying back and asking the questions is really how I could get them to, at some point, finalize what they wanted the classroom culture to be.
We also did that for like recess, because those times that are a little less structured, or where everything's going to happen and the disagreements. Right. And so we also talked about, like, what do you want it to feel like at recess? Well, we want to just have fun. We want everybody to follow the rules of the game. We want, and it's like, okay, well, how does that work? What does that look like? And so we'd give scenarios, usually things that we had seen in real life happening. Right. And we'd revisit those through the year. So if something was continually coming up that, we never can agree on the rules of Gaga Ball, it was like, all right, well, let's create what does that look like? What are the rules that we agree to play by? And when is it okay, to break these rules? And when are we holding to this? And so really just helping them navigate, how do we be in community together? And I don't think enough schools that I have been a part of have been intentional about how are we in community together and what does that look like? Right.
Recess could be, like you said before, that a place where things fell apart. And a lot of our newer students would come to me when I would be on recess duty and say, I don't know the rules for recess here. And so we would have to kind of talk about that, because it's like, okay, well, how would the rules for recess how might they look different than a classroom rule? And so the kids could say, well, we can be louder outside. And I was like, okay, if you do a blood curdling scream at recess because you're playing, would that be a good thing, or might that scare someone? It's like, oh yeah, or
what might the adult think is happening?
That's what the kids would say too. Oh, you might think that we're hurt. Oh, okay, great. Let's move on with that. So we did have rules at recess that were different. And like one of them, for example, would be no takedowns. And so we'd have to look and say, okay, there's another no. Why are we saying you can't just go up to somebody and tackle them? And then especially the kids who wanted to play football, and they were like, okay, well, maybe it's because we get really intense and we might hurt somebody. Yes.
We're not wearing protective gear.
And when you're
might be one of
I
them.
play football and I get to do this all the time at practice. Yes, but you're wearing tackling pads and you're not wearing those any of that.
And everybody has agreed that that's the game you're playing. Yeah.
But those were great discussions, again, to have kids. And they had ownership in that because we involved them in the discussions. It wasn't just, well, Mrs. Baldwin says we can't do this. There were times where, as the adults, we struggled with consistency of how...
From adult to adult, how to hold that line.
And also because we were on shared space, a lot of the times it wasn't an anastasis rule. It might have been the building rule.
Yes.
Right.
Don't climb trees.
We don't own these trees and they've asked us not to climb them. And that was, super sad because these kids love to climb trees. But yeah.
And those trees were cool.
They were very cool. Yeah. All of that to say, it's still there had to be that level of trust already when the kids came in, the way that we started school, helping them to know that we weren't just throwing rules at them arbitrarily, that there was a reason for things.
And we would stop and explain
Right.
the reason. When it was something that we couldn't, there wasn't leeway, we couldn't have a
Right.
discussion about, they knew we were pretty upfront with why that was happening. Or so it wasn't, it is that way just because Mrs. Tenkely says
Right.
so.
And they learned these are negotiables, these are non-negotiables, and why each thing might have been a non-negotiable and how important that was for safety. Okay, that makes sense. And I feel like when we give kids lots of times when I was a kid, if I would ask why, it's because I said so. And I think that there are a lot of kids now who get, well, that's because they're the rules or because it's the law or whatever. And looking at, okay, well, why do you think that rule was implemented in the first place? And it's almost always a safety rule, but it might be an emotional safety rule. Right. And helping kids to basically parse through those things to say, oh, there is a reason. It's not just because an adult wants to have control over me. I feel like explaining those things to kids does not take anything away from me as the adult in the room, but it does give them more trust to know that this isn't just a stupid rule that doesn't make any sense. And if they had a question because they thought a rule didn't make sense, and a lot of them did, well, I don't understand this rule. Let's talk about it. And then sometimes we were able to either get them to a place of understanding, or we could adjust things so it didn't feel like they were being punished for something that really wasn't a big deal.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting because a lot of places, again, I came from places that had like very strict dress code rules, and, you know, you'd get written up for the belt being the wrong color on the wrong, like things that just were absurd. And so I understood when we had kids coming and visiting and shadowing to see if they were going to come to Anastasis, why they were so concerned with what are the rules. You know, I don't want to break the rules because I just didn't know what the rules were. And so they were often very nervous about, you know, bathrooms, like you said. A lot of times it was like how they could play on the playground, how they could, you know, do things in the lunchroom, things like that were usually sticking points where our students were so used to being part of that process that it didn't even really occur to them or us to like tell that to a shadow student until we had gotten those questions so many times.
Well, and again, they're kids. They are going to mess up at some point. And so we would talk about, okay, well, what is a consequence when you're not really abiding by the things that you have agreed or make sense? And sometimes it was just that kid was having a day, right? And we just needed a little extra time to talk with with an adult. It might have been some time we needed to process through. Yeah, I was being a jerk to my friends because I'm nervous about something else, whatever that might be.
Or I got embarrassed was usually the root cause was I got embarrassed.
Right. And they're still kids. We're still the adults. We're still charged with, you know, making sure that things are happening in a way that's safe for everyone. I think in lunch is another good example where we would talk sometimes about, you know, certain teachers have more noise tolerance than others. And there were days when I'd be like,
mine is low.
Mine is, if it's a small room, mine is definitely low. And so I would be, okay, I know this about myself. If they're loud enough that they're all talking at a normal volume and it's just loud, I'm going to deal with that. I'll turn on a setting on my little neuroband that helps me cope with it, right? This is a me thing. If it was so loud that they couldn't hear directions or something that was important, then I would just say, hey, we're too loud. We need to bring it on down. Just a little. Could you just bring it down?
Bring it back to green.
And they were like, oh, okay. And again, it would rise as the day went on. But I think knowing that about yourself as the adult, what is this really a problem? Is it something that makes this not a safe environment? Or am I just in a place right now where loud noises are bothering me? And again, we used to, when I was in elementary school, if we were too loud, they would blow whistles super loud in a gym that reverberated everything. And then we had to have silent lunch. And we all hated silent lunch because that was the only time we really got to talk to our friends. So that's just another thing to think back. Okay, is it something that's really a problem, or am I just an adult being cranky and get off my lawn? Or is it, is it, they're just being kids and this is something that is okay. Let them do this piece here, because there's not, if it's not an unsafe situation, why is it a problem? Are they disturbing somebody else in the building? We were all there at the same time for lunch, which we loved because more community. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you're right. Anytime it was always my issue is what I'm going to say.
Same.
Like it was always my own noise issue. Let's talk about some of the things we did during Detox just to build community. I was remembering, like speed friending was something we did a lot, where we'd put kids in groups of 2, and just give them the charge of, make sure you know their name, ask them if they have siblings, do they have pets, and then try to go deeper, try to get, deeper than surface level. What's your favorite color? And the kids got really good at it, and then we'd switch partners so that they had a chance to meet everybody. What was so funny to me is the number of times the kids would ask after an activity like that, can we do speed friending again? And it was so funny because you're like, you can do that whenever you want, actually. You don't have to wait for us to implement that.
Right. And watching them carry those things over into like a recess situation where, let's pretend, and we're going to be dragons today. And, I learned that you really like the beach, so you should be the desert dragon. And then having them talk those kind of things out. So watching how those things during Detox Week would play into their imaginative play or whatever they chose to do. Oh, you really like baseball, so we're going to, pretend that we're playing baseball or something. I don't know. I think that for some kids, if they were really intimidated by having a one-on-one conversation, sometimes speed friending was hard for them.
It would have been hard for me
Same.
as a kid. I always watched for those, and I'd usually go sit in their group with them to facilitate, because it would have been hard for me.
Yeah. But that's where those learner profiles also helped, because we knew ahead of time the kids who told us, I don't like being one-on-one, I'd rather be in a large group, or I have a best friend, but I don't make other friends really easily.
It's hard for me to make friends. Yeah.
So listening to them during those learner profiles and hearing those things, and then helping to design activities that they'd be comfortable in. That's again, part of why I feel like they really trusted us to be able to do some of the things. And even where we say, okay, I hear you say that this is hard for you. Let's work on this. And having, one of our shy students say, I don't want to be this shy all the time. Okay, how can we help you move forward? And then she could give us some suggestions that she thought of. We'd give her some suggestions. And again, who I'm thinking of, but
I do.
Right?
Hid behind her
hair. But getting to that level of comfort and trust with your teacher enough to say that is a huge thing.
Well, and we would start, before we did speed friending activities, we'd start in larger circles of kids where everybody was answering the same question. What's the worst battle scar you ever got? It's always a fun one because everybody's got a story and usually wants to share it. But we also would let those kids who we knew were nervous to be in that situation skip and just listen.
Right.
And so that they knew that they had permission. We weren't going to just throw them to the wolves and like, you're going to do it. I think made for that trust later on in those scenarios where it was like, I know this is going to be a little bit hard. Who would you like to pair with first? Or, do you want me to sit next to you? Those kind of things would be helpful.
It's so funny now when you listen to adults talk about things that they really dislike. We talked before about public speaking as a huge issue for a lot of people. The other one is icebreakers or team building activities in their work or whatever job they have. And even other educators, many people hate icebreakers. And it's interesting for me to think about that. I'm like, well, of course you don't like icebreakers with people you don't know very well, or that you don't have that trust, that kind of trusting relationship, because They seem like
it's vulnerable.
It is. And they seem like a waste of time.
Especially for people who are, especially for people who are maybe introverted or shy, or you're not sure of your place in this group, like super vulnerable, but you haven't earned the trust yet.
And especially if you have someone who's in power above you, who's either dictating that or is in the group, because now you're like, I don't know what the expectations are. So all of those kind of things I see adults talk about all the time. It's like, don't make me do an icebreaker. But when we did it with kids, as we continue to develop that this is a community, we care about each other. This is not a time to be one-upping your neighbor or whatever that might be. How are you sharing something that you feel comfortable sharing with the group so we get to know you better? And that was something like they could take that and say, okay, I have trust here. I feel comfortable sharing this, but then it did help us to get to know them better, and as well as all of their peers and other classes. And just then they started to really have fun with it.
Yeah. Once we got past that hesitation of, is it okay to join in? Is it okay? Is it going to be safe for me to do this? We really saw the connections, and like I said, even cross classroom connections were so cool. I've never seen that in another school the way that it happened at Anastasis, of, the bigs and the littles interacting so beautifully and taking care of one another and seeing each other. I also think that I was remembering the exercises, like we got those little canvases and we did musical paintings. Where you would start at one and you would start painting, and then the music would stop and everyone would move one. And what was neat is the kids got to see each other's personality come out in a different way, and they got to see each other's talents come out in a different way. They were all contributing to each other's masterpieces. And then the discussion afterwards of, what did you notice about other people's, or what did you add, or, it was such a neat way that didn't put any one person on the spot, because it was like everybody was contributing to paintings together.
And they couldn't paint over what somebody had already done. So that level of respect was built in, that someone has started this. You have to add in a way that complements what's there.
We're yes-anding. We're not knowing. Yeah, things like that just became such rich experiences that, again, we could draw from the whole rest of the year, the things that happened at Detox. We read a lot of like growth mindset books, where we were just setting the stage for what school was going to be like at Anastasis. And we would talk a lot in specifics. We'd stop as we read and have those discussions of, here's what this looks like here, and what have you experienced other places? And, it's, again, we're detoxing from some of those messages we may have gotten from other places and kind of rebuilding. We play a lot of little Pixar clips and different clips from videos that just focused on that growth mindset. Class reads that genuinely we could go back to for the whole rest of the year and tie back into that class read that happened during Detox Week.
Well, and just even having kids think through, okay, what's the baggage that I have, whether they've been at a previous school or not? What's the thing that you bring to school that makes school hard? And if it's the kid, nothing, I love school. Oh, great. Then we're going to keep that trajectory going. Right.
Yeah. How do we protect that?
And if it was, I do remember, one little guy would say, I got in trouble a lot. And I was, okay, tell me. He goes, well, I just didn't really always understand rules or whatever. So again, making sure that particular kid who was high justice, right, but also sometimes pushed the boundaries of what he could and couldn't do, and then helping him to say, you recognize this. I know that you do. And you know where your boundary lines are, but right now you're pushing it. And he knew that I could say that to him because I wasn't going to immediately punish him and call his parents and say, come get him, because that was his experience at his previous school. It didn't,
or spent the entire year in the hallway.
Right. And it didn't give him permission to keep breaking rules. it made him like I knew he was testing us. That's what kids always do. They test their limits because they want to know.
Where is the boundary?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even when
Yep.
you draw that line really, really heavy for them, sometimes they still push it because that's what children do. And when you know that it's not a personal affront to you as their teacher, I'll just take that back for a second, because I do remember as a younger teacher being personally offended, didn't know it at the time, but when somebody would misbehave in my classroom or call me a name or whatever, even though I didn't change my face, and I was like, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Of course it did. But I took everything so personally, because that's who I am. I care enough, but when I started to learn that they're not doing this to get at me, or even if they are, I am the adult. This is not about my feelings, right? I need to be able to model and be the example to show them how to deal with conflict, or how to deal with, I don't know what to do. And again, I feel like that's something that we were able to do pretty well at Anastasis over the years, especially. It got easier because we were modeling for each other, and we were modeling for the kids. And again, that comes back to the culture of...
It did get so much easier, where the things that we are even talking about didn't happen.
No.
It wasn't fully formed year one. It was an evolving process where we were seeing what are the kids' needs. We were also, I think, growing ourselves quite a bit in emotional intelligence. Like, I know certainly that's true for me. Where I was even recognizing, like, oh, this is an anxiety response I'm having, like, this is not about anybody else. This is all happening inside of me.
Right. Well, and when we had our own life stresses sometimes, and those things would come in, and you always resort back to the default, which might be how you were taught or how you were taught to teach. And I did find myself falling back into those old patterns sometimes, especially when my own personal life might've been getting heavy. And I would have to say, oh guys, you know what? This is about me. This isn't about you. This is my mistake. And then to show them, first of all, I can apologize for that.
You would say that?
Yes.
That is relationship restored.
Right.
And I did it too. I would go back to kids and say, I misspoke. I didn't understand what you were asking.
Right.
I was frustrated. Yep. You saw that on my face.
I had an emotional response, and I apologize for that. I am human. I made a mistake. It's not going to continue in this way. Here's what I will do, and here's what I expect you to do. And like you'd said, we're restoring a relationship there. Being vulnerable enough to say, this was my bad, right? But restoring a relationship means that I can make it better and either regain trust or show you, to make you trust me more, that this is not who I am all the time. And how we can show kids that there's a difference between a mistake and a bad choice. Mistakes are, I didn't know better, and it's just a mistake, and I'm going to correct that. A bad choice is sometimes not even necessarily a choice. It's just a pattern of behavior. And I'm working on fixing that and correcting it. And that's all I want from them too.
I was so proud of our staff for being adults who would say, this is really hard for me. Even, we had not just you, but we had teachers over the years, you're one of them, who would say, my thinking face looks angry sometimes. I'm not actually angry. I'm just thinking. You can always ask me. It's okay. But even to name that for kids and they go, oh, she's probably just that's so powerful. And I do not recall any of my teachers ever having that level of human vulnerability to just name what was happening. And so then I was, as kids, you're left to just fill in the gaps with what you think is happening. And a lot of times that conclusion is wrong, which is, well, they must be mad at me. I must be bad. I must be doing something wrong. They're disappointed. It was all these things when it could have been, no, she just read an email and she's processing it.
That was a detox activity that I had done in one of our blocks, How We Express Ourselves. And we were talking about emotions. And so this was like probably 2012, 2013, where I had kids take pictures of their faces for different emotions. And then they made like a little slideshare or something. And it was super cute. And then I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be actually really helpful for all kids. And so we started doing that at the beginning of the year during detox time. And I would do it also. And that's like you'd said, when I'm thinking, I look like I'm angry. So that opened up conversation for kids to ask, are you just thinking right now? Mm-hmm. Right? Yes, I'm not even looking at you. I'm just making that face because that's what my face does. And it was funny because then they would start to feel this freedom to ask more about emotions. And when they are free to ask about other people's emotions, then they're free to share with their own as well. And that helps.
Well, and we could come in, I could come in to a metanoia time and say, I had a really hard morning and I'm a little bit frustrated. So my tolerance for things is going to be lower today. And I would just name it up front. Like there's no help to anyone if I keep that to myself. And now I'm just frustrated and the kids are like, what is, it's out of character. What's happening? She must be really mad at us today. If I could come in and say, the dog pooped all over the house this morning. It was a whole thing. It was a real mess. I'm a little bit cranky this morning. I didn't sleep well. My tolerance is going to be different today.
It's on me to work through that, and I will, but it's just letting you know where I am, right?
Letting you know that it's going to be lower.
You know how many kids do that already, that it's by word of mouth in a school, or when I taught high school, I would come in every once in a while. Early in the morning, I'd have an extracurricular group before school started. Then I'd leave and go into the office and, go talk to other teachers. And I'd come back and there would be symbols on my chalkboard. I'm so old. I used to have a chalkboard, everybody. But I learned that was the heads up to the rest of the classes that I came in with either a really good mood or not a good mood. And once they shared with me, I was like, oh gosh, that's really, again, and at the time I was in my mid-20s. I didn't know a whole lot about teaching. I still think I did pretty well under the circumstances, but it kind of was like, oh gosh, am I really in that bad of a mood that they had to put a symbol on my chalkboard to let the rest of the school know that watch out for her. She's on a rampage today. That shouldn't happen.
It's also, learning is such a social construct and we forget that it's a social construct. And so when all of that is not named, when it's just, we're assuming that kids maybe have more intelligence around facial expressions and whatever than they do. I think those assumptions actually hurt the learning.
Right.
And that's what makes detox something like Detox Week, where you're very intentionally saying, we're going to appreciate each other's gifts. We're going to learn how to collaborate and work together. We're going to figure out how we agree to be in community. You're creating the conditions that learning can happen best within that social construct.
And you can watch the kids as they're sitting in morning meeting, for example, and they have someone share something that they've had a hard morning. And then you watch the kids sitting beside each other as we've modeled for them. How can I help you today? Do you want to sit with me today at lunch? So that kid has, the one who had a hard day has something to look forward to. Or do you want space or do you want to talk about it? And hearing children, 7-year-old kids say that to each other, oh my gosh, my heart goes like,
it is the coolest thing. And I've never been a part of it anywhere. I just haven't seen it other places. I know it exists other places, but I hadn't seen it like it kind of played out. And, even you'd see them connect in the lobby before we'd go up to Metanoia. You'd see them connect in Metanoia. And like you said, the best was they'd all be kind of sitting together and encouraging each other, an arm around somebody. And then, do you want to walk with me or do you want to walk with somebody? Those check-ins were so amazing and precious. And
how that spills over into adult world is interesting. I remember there was an office where I worked once when we were all in cubicles, and one of our colleagues she was the busiest. She was in charge of every Mac related, Apple related device in the district of there were 23,000 kids and then, and then 3,000 staff members, teaching staff. So if she had red Solo cups on her top of her cubicle, that was everybody else. That was the chalkboard symbols on the sign for her.
Yep.
Everybody would put those up there, and she'd walk in and see them. And then she's like, I'm already mad. Why are you guys doing this to me? But
don't
right?
make me angry.
Different office levels. I mean, wherever you're working, people are already doing that. So wouldn't it be great if you had, again, a culture where you could talk about it rather than just putting up warning signs or gnomes or whatever it might be?
Gnomes. Oh man, forgot all about the gnomes. That's a whole. We'll hit that another day. That's going to be an involved story. The gnomes. I was thinking about Paper Source. I think that's where. I probably got it off of Amazon. Has these paper tantrums. And it's just like a tear off sheet. And I made for all of you during work week a laminated set of paper tantrums that you could check mark what was happening and how you were feeling and what you needed and send it down to the office. And I was like, we really should have made some paper tantrums for the kids too, that they could have said like, I had a hard morning. I need you to not call on me, like just be able to say what they need. But I loved getting, especially when the teachers of the littles who were not yet reading would send me the paper tantrum of all of the things. I needed a break from this one asking me another question right now for just a minute. Can you give her a role to do in the office?
Can't hear a child say my name one more time.
Yes.
I'm going to implode. Please help. But again,
yes. As lovely as things were at Anastasis, we still are human and children are still children, and we still are,
right.
All of the frustrations, all the things are still true, even when it's kind of dreamy.
But you're in an environment who honors who you are, knows and also honors that you're human. And again, that trickles down into how you work with kids, and the kids know that for themselves. They can see it modeled with the adults, and then they can learn to act that way with each other. And I love watching the classes. Even though we really gelled as a community, those classes were also so tight-knit close-knit, not tight-knit, close-knit, because they felt like little micro families in some ways. Where that can come up is then they sometimes acted like siblings do, and it would have more like sibling issues than classmate issues. But at the same time, they learned to care for each other. Even if they weren't best buddies or even would call themselves friends, they still learned to care about each other in the classroom so that they took care of each other. And
honored one another in, even if they weren't best friends, they still respected. They still showed respect, which was cool. It's neat to see too on the other end after they leave, how they stay connected on social media and still comment on each other's things and like each other's things, where you're like, oh, I wouldn't have guessed that you two would stay in contact in that way. But they've shown each other enough mutual respect over the years, or mutual respect might be the word. I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but they can appreciate the value that they add to the world, even if they don't gel.
And the hardest year we had for that, hardest year and a half, was when we were isolated because of COVID. Either because they were not in a classroom with each other, they were still online, or when they couldn't really leave the classroom and have lunch all together. That year looked very different. And I remember it
changed our parent culture a lot. It did.
And I know
not being able to come and just hang in the school and in the office and
And how many, and I know that happened in a lot of schools that did not, rush to go get kids back in. But how hard that was. I mean, collectively, globally, it wounded all of us in a lot of different ways. And I don't want to make light of that by any means. That was very difficult. But for what we were used to, it did not feel like us.
It did not at all. And we were interacting cross classroom. And so the whole community felt fractured in weird ways. Yeah, that was a really hard year.
Right.
It didn't I don't know if I fully understood how hard it was in the moment. And I don't know if that's just because we were doing the best we could and, with what we had. But in reflection, it was like, oh my gosh, that feels like a completely different school.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's just a testament to the culture that we do create, because when we weren't able to do it the same way, it was very, very different and it was very difficult.
It felt very different. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good point. We always ended Detox Week with an insane moment, which is we would dismiss school. We had half day on the Friday of the last day of Detox Week. Parents would pick up. We would meet at a local Chick-fil-A because the kids love Chick-fil-A, and they would all have lunch together. And then we would head to a park with a grassy hill, where I would fill up our Anastasis truck with 50 to 60 blocks of ice, which you can purchase at your local grocery store. But top tip, if you take this idea, you're going to want to call the grocery store and let them know that you want that many blocks of ice, because they don't always have it in stock. But essentially, these blocks of ice are like 2 by, I don't know.
Maybe.
How big are they?
Oh, I would say they're bigger than that. It's probably like 4 inches by 10 by 4. I mean, they're pretty big blocks.
They're pretty big blocks of ice. They weigh 10 pounds. Yeah. And so everybody gets a block of ice. They take a towel that they bring from home. They set it on the block of ice, and they sled down the hill in the summer sunshine. And it is the most fun, glorious day. But what I love about that as an end is, one, it doesn't matter how athletic you are, you can play at ice blocking day. So even me, who has no balance skills of anything to speak of, can enjoy ice blocking. We can just be in community together. All the parents are there. We intentionally don't make it a field trip where we're transporting kids. We make it a community thing so that parents show up and can get to know one another as the kids are having fun. It was fun over the years to see how parents would get involved in ice blocking and let kids slide down on their backs. I think we had cracked ribs one year.
The dad, not the child.
The dad, yes. The children were always fine. But it was always the adults that were having those issues. But it was just a fun way to end the week. And again, I think from the outside looking in, if you just see that we have this week and a half of non-specific academic, we're not doing intentional, get right into the content kind of learning. And then you see us spend a day where we are spending an afternoon sledding down a hill together on blocks of ice. You would think that's insanity. But I hold too that if we did not intentionally build community and culture like we did during Detox Week and Ice Blocking Day, I don't think we would have the same school.
Right. It doesn't have to be ice blocking. I mean, it can be something that it
could be literally anything.
Like low expectations of anything responsible, and then high expectations of fun. And the kids had a blast. Even the kids who were a little unsure of it towards after the first few rounds, they would start to go. They would sometimes sit side by side with their little friend and hold hands as they went down the hill. I have great photos.
Well, and I loved that it was the first time that parents were really seeing that the older kids were watching out for their youngest. Right. It was where the community could see that happening in real time, because they would see the oldest help carry up a block of ice or sit next to there and hold the hands down or things like that.
Or show them how, here, if you wrap your towel this way on your ice, and it's easier to sit, or it's easier to lug it up the hill, because they were 10 pounds. Some of those 5-year-olds were barely more than that themselves.
Some of us adults had a hard time carrying the 10 pounds back up the hill.
Yeah.
It was good exercise for all of us too. But just, low expectations, high fun, whatever that looks like for your community, I think it doesn't have to be ice blocking. It doesn't even have to be the way we did it where it's a half day and whatever. But again, just thinking intentionally about how do we indicate to our kids that they are central, that we care about them being able to show up as whole humans, that we value who they are, that they're worthy, that they don't have to look like everyone else. Like what can we mine in our space to really look at what's happening?
And going back to how we started when we talked about rewards, a lot of times I know schools will use these kind of days as rewards. So if you don't toe the line, you don't get to go to the special day. And that was never the situation at Anastasis and is not going to be that way because it's intentionally community, not this is a reward for kids who behave. Yeah. Right.
I so badly want to tell a story right now and I'm not going to.
Then I'll tell one. I will tell one. My youngest, when she was in, I think 5th grade, her teacher had a black book. And if you misbehaved, and that could look like anything from talking when you weren't supposed to not putting your name on your paper, you had to go put your name in the black book. And if your name,
this is horrifying.
Yes. So it started at the beginning of the year. And so you can already imagine kids with attention issues or forgetfulness or whatever it might be, your name's going to be in that book a lot. If your name was in there 3 times, you didn't get to go to the ice cream party in May. So for a whole school year,
Atlanta.
A whole school year, these kids know that there is a reward coming. But for the kids who are names already in there 3 times by September 1st or earlier, you already know you don't get to have the ice cream party at the end of the year. Okay, so again, everything we know about rewards, bad. But this was like really bad because she came home and she was like, well, I don't get the ice cream party. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so she shared with me that her name was in this black book 3 times. And I was like, well, what did you do? Well, I always forget to put my name on my paper. And I said, okay, well, that is an issue. And then she goes, and I think I was talking when I wasn't supposed to. I'm like, okay, what else? Again, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop because I thought it was going to be serious.
What is the actual bad thing? Yeah.
Yeah. And she's, she wasn't that kid.
Wow.
So that's an extreme example. But again, it goes back to.
I was going to talk about Nerf wars. I'm not going to, but
yeah, those were not good. Anybody who is in there, they know. Yeah. When we use those kind of days that are fun, instead of building community, if you're using them as a reward, then you're not building community. You're actually, that's a detriment to your community.
The hidden curriculum is you're tearing it apart. Yeah. Well, I loved Detox Week. I think it was good for everybody.
Yeah.
It was a good start. It was an ease into the school year from summer. I know that parents didn't always see the value. We got better over time in helping explain why we were doing it. I think we got more, we just got better at talking about why we were intentionally doing it and how, and then, as parents saw how it played out over the years, it became easier to be like, yeah, that seems to work.
Yeah. I think they're used to hearing instructional time and instructional days and, kids and seat time and things like that. And so the assumption is that you're wasting time. And we can talk about a lot of times when somebody has said that seems like wasted instructional time. And again, if you look at kids as little robots that you open up the top of their head and just pour a bunch of information in, then of course you are wasting instructional time, but that's not who they are. And as you said before, it's not honoring that they have agency, that they come in as humans and sometimes need human understanding. Lots of times need human understanding.
I mean, all the time.
It's, you cannot expect.
Don't we all?
And again, as I'd said when we first started, they're in school 7 to 8 hours a day. And that's a long time for kids, especially littles, because they still have not even begun to understand how time works and feels. So when you're expecting them to be there for that length of time and they're supposed to be productive the entire time, that's not how we do things. That's not how humans operate. It's an unrealistic expectation.
I do know that Detox was sometimes hard for new staff members who had come from those schools, that it was all about instructional time. And, you know, they would feel so guilty that, well, I haven't really done anything yet. And I'm like, I would be disappointed if I walked in and they were all, you know, working on something. It's too soon. They need time to gel and find that belonging. It has to be rooted in belonging first.
Right. And the thing that I think is so important to understand is, because we did that, because we built a culture, because the kids knew and were developing trust with us, when it was time to move into, for lack of better terms, a more academic path, those kids actually were more on board. We didn't have as many of the things happening that you get at the beginning of the year when that trust isn't built, when the relationships aren't cultivated. And because of that, the learning happened in different ways, and what I think were better ways. They were able to go into an inquiry unit and really be vulnerable and ask good questions, because it was okay. We learned that we can do that when we're playing together. So for as non-academic as it looked, we did silly Socratic Summit like dialogues during Detox Week, where it was low stakes. Everybody could contribute. I don't know that kids knew that's what was happening. I would say they probably didn't. I would argue that it was actually very informative to us and informed my instruction more than starting on day one.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you know what you're looking for, again, it's the intentionality behind why are you doing it. We weren't just playing just to play. Right. There was method to the madness.
Right. For sure.
Well, cool. I feel good. Do you feel good?
I feel good.
You always have a song.
I always have a song.
Love it. Well, I think next week, maybe I had said last week we should talk detox and inquiry, and we got very little into inquiry. So maybe we jump into what learning looked like at Anastasis and kind of how we approach that through those inquiry blocks.
I think that's a great idea. I think for sure that as we talk about inquiry, we're also going to have to talk a little bit about assessment, but also know that
1,000%.
that will probably spend another episode entirely on assessment.
Yeah, it's going to, even how we built it, I think is a good story. So
definitely.
We'll talk about that another time. Yeah. Well, thanks friends for joining us, and we hope to catch you next time.
Onward.
Hey, Michelle, where else can people find you online?
I blog at avenue4learning.com, and the 4 is the actual number 4, not the word 4, avenue4learning.com.
And you can find me at dreamsofeducation.wordpress.com, which is my original blog. You can also find me at ktsplace.com, which is where I share a bunch of resources and kind of projects that we're currently working on. And we are both on Blue Sky at the moment, but not as active as we once were on our favorite bird. Come find us and connect with us in other places, and we look forward to connecting with you.
Education.